This is MyWitness News. In no way, shape, or form fair and certainly not balanced. And now, super producer to the stars, Barry Funkhauser.
I have misplaced my cup of coffee. If anyone has seen it, contact me immediately. What happened with the Harv?
The Harv? Oh, there's just, new developments. I don't know if you saw it or not, but Kate Winslet said, I totally called him out for that years ago. Courtney Love said she called him out years ago, and it got her dropped from her agency.
I saw that video,
CAA.
too. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. We'll get into all that a little later on. I mean, it just it's mind-numbing how much of Hollywood was complicit in this thing. And look, it really speaks to how we look. And there's so many people I knew Hollywood was a cesspool of I knew it was morally the most turgid of all segments of our society, Hollywood, California, and their entertainment business. And good things aren't like that here where I live today. But here's the thing. I think it's so important that we take a look at what was going on with Harvey Weinstein for so long, because it doesn't have to be Hollywood. It could be any area of society or life. And situations that will mirror this will play out. People get away with just horrible things for far too long because people are unwilling to speak up, and those that do speak up are punished for it. And that is why it bears a closer look. Like I said, a lot of people too willing to dismiss Hollywood as just this morally inept cesspool of sin and degradation. And of course that happened in Hollywood, but as much as people are vultures from the sidelines wanting to look on and see what is going on with this situation, the important takeaway from the Harvey Weinstein thing is this sort of thing happens every day in all sort of different segments of society to so many different people. And, well, there's something, like I said, to learn from it that we can apply to the town that we live in. It's not all Hollywood all the time. In fact, like I said, the things that happen, or the things that happened with Harvey Weinstein, are all too commonplace in everyday life, and we often turn a blind eye to them, or we just don't see them, or the people who are willing to say something are treated in a punitive manner, and that's not okay. Anyways, that's for later on in the show. What is going on, Funkhauser?
Usher turned 39.
Remember when it was just his music that was infectious? If you're looking for a gift, you can't go wrong with a box of condoms. It's what is it, two? Is it more than 50%? 1 out of 3, 2 out of 4, more than half of us supposedly have HPV now. Is that the case, Funkhauser? Something like that. There's some statistic, and Usher has been saying hey, in 2017, you kind of, when you get with someone sexually, this is your own risk that you're taking. And this brouhaha is the fact that he maybe didn't disclose that he had HPV to different partners, and for that reason he's taken a lot of heat. And he was like, everybody has this. This is a really common thing. That's a you problem, not a me problem. It's an interesting one. It's an interesting one, to be sure. I think a big part of the reason why I haven't gotten that much action as an adult, bear in mind, I was a kid. I was a teenager with a tour bus. I could have gotten sweet love and left, right, and center for large portions of my life, and I just haven't. I've been very selective for a number of different reasons, not least of which is I'm petrified of diseases. I've been tested more times than I can even remember. And I think one of the takeaways from that is get tested. Getting tested will scare you. You ever had a urethral swab, Funkhauser?
Oh, I can't wait for one of those.
Oh my gosh, I remember the first time I got tested, I had the urethral swab. And without going into gory detail too much. That's the coolest metal band
name ever, by the way.
Urethral swab. We are, we are urethral swab. Thank you to Illegible Font for opening up on the bill. but it's like this. It's basically a big metal Q-tip that is used to swab the inside of your business. Am I being clear, Funkhauser?
I think you were clear before, but okay.
Mm-hmm. And I'll never forget the woman going, well, me saying to the woman as she was like, it's time for your urethral swab. I was like, will this hurt? And she was like, yep, pow. And boy, did it ever. That put me off. the whole sort of like the whole fear that goes along with being tested is a healthy thing to embrace because it's a good reminder of how things are likely to be in 2017 and how they have been for years and years. But going through a little bit of pain and humiliation with regard to all that, I think is a healthy thing. I think those tests should be painful and humiliating.
You take the good and you take the bad. Yeah,
I think the pain and humiliation that go with the testing after every sexual partner and hopefully before every sexual partner for everybody. I think those things are good because you don't walk out of that place feeling like Don freaking Juan, the master swordsman. You go out, you leave the place going, I need to really think about my actions. And I think that's a good thing.
Dawson's Creek star James Vanderbeek says his ass was groped by a male studio executive.
Oh. Someone grabbed a handful of Dawson's cheek? One more.
Jennifer Garner is starring in a new movie where she plays the wife of a cheating husband.
Surprisingly, not a documentary. She prepared for the role by being married to Ben Affleck.
You're longing for that shining sun. You walk these streets most every day. You're waiting to get washed away. Radio. 104.1.
Now, more AD on the radio.
Back once again, the ill behavior, delivering and giving you my musical savior. Back once again, it's your boy AD again. Nobody rock nobody better than me. Back once again, the ill behavior, delivering and giving you a musical savior. Back once again. So, video has surfaced of Courtney Love making a crack about Harvey Weinstein taking advantage of young actresses in 2005, and Kate Winslet said she intentionally didn't thank him when she won her Oscar in 2009. We'll get into all of that a little bit later on. And like I said, the important part is the learning experience we take from the Harvey Weinstein situation into our daily lives, into our towns, into our workplaces, into our cognizance. Because, like I said, there's this voyeur aspect to what's going on with Harvey Weinstein at the moment where people like to look at it and go, that's Hollywood. That's so different. Look at that festering cesspool of sin and immorality. But sadly, the lessons that we learned from the Harvey Weinstein situation playing out of sexual predators in positions of power, taking advantage of people, and then people being treated punitively when they try and speak up about it. Sadly, that applies so much more to our daily lives than we'd like to think. It's not just looking at Hollywood and going, this is an us and them situation. So we'll get into that a little later on. What else is going on in the world, Funkhauser?
Well. This artist has a birthday. He's turning 76 today.
Oh. You know what this instrument is called that comes in right here?
What?
Funkhauser? It's called a cuica. Yeah.
What is it?
Cuica.
A cuica?
Cuica.
Your mama pajama rolled out of bed and she ran.
Yeah, he has a birthday. Guess how old?
I think Paul Simon's like... So I saw Paul Simon play a couple of years ago, and at the time he was like 74, I think, because I remember like pulling out my phone going, boy, he sure does dance around a lot. How old is he these days?
76.
That's impressive.
Your
how much
math
he moves.
works out.
Yeah, he's 76. Which means these days when he wants the sound of silence, he just turns off his hearing aid. You know, oh my gosh, I forgot to tell you. You know who I saw on Friday night?
Who?
That is also a little long in the tooth?
What?
Might be 76 or 77.
Meh.
Saw Bob Dylan play.
Oh, where? Like outside
saw
or
Bob
inside?
Dylan play. Yeah, saw him play inside.
Inside. Was he sitting down or standing up?
And like, was I sitting down?
Was
Oh
he?
no, I was. He played the piano, and during the times where he was playing the piano, he was sitting down, and then he stood up for a lot of other stuff. But
cool.
like, he's, I think, probably around the same age as Paul Simon, like mid to late 70s. And when he's standing up holding the microphone, he still looks like he could kick your ass. Like, he's a cantankerous dude, and he seems cranky, and like he like if you got on stage, you ever see that footage of some fan jumping on stage at a Rolling Stones concert without even thinking about it? You know, like you would think some singers or some guitar players would stop, put their arm around the person that got on, and wait for security to usher them off the stage. Not Keith Richards. Takes his like Stratocaster off, whacks a guy over the head with it. He's like, "Hey man, you don't know what that guy's got on his mind. He got on stage. He's not supposed to be here, and got to defend yourself just in case you don't know what happens." But like, yeah, Bob Dylan looks like he could still kick your ass, which is an interesting one. But it was so funny because like Bob Dylan, in case you didn't know, still plays like 100 shows a year. Like, he lives his life on the road. I think he had this like girlfriend that he had a baby with. I think he's got a couple of those. And I think they wanted, like, she asked him, like, can we move in together? And he was like, no. And she was like, why not? He's like, baby, I can barely live with myself. And I think that's part of the reason why he spends so much time on the road. It's sort of like an escape from any kind of real life. He tours incessantly. That's just his life and how he does things. But it's funny. I was sitting next to this guy who was like, is he going to play any classics? Like, he was playing all these songs. He played Autumn Leaves, the jazz standard, and it was actually great. It was really, really cool. But he worked his way through a set that had almost nothing in it that, you know, sort of the casual fan would recognize. And and this guy looks over at me and he's like, is he gonna play any classics? I was like, he's playing Blowing in the Wind right now. He's like, is that what that is? I was like, yeah. And he plays his songs that in a way that are so completely different from how you got to know them, that I think half the audience loves it because they've been to 100 Bob Dylan shows and they want to see something a little different. They can't, you know, go through the same thing every single time. And then half the audience is like, what the hell, man? What did I just pay for? It's an interesting one. And you know what I could tell from looking at Bob Dylan on stage? He doesn't care. I don't think the guy said a single word to the audience, just came out and started playing, and that was it. And apparently he's like, he doesn't see or talk to his band until like a second before he goes on stage. He's this reclusive old cantankerous artist that everybody loves. It's a weird thing, and I think that was my takeaway from seeing Bob Dylan. I'd never seen him before, but you really got a sense of who he was and how he went through life just by watching him for an hour on stage, and maybe that's one of the things that makes him so compelling. Yep.
Yes, I agree with that. I saw him at the Mid-State Fair a while ago. During the sunset. Everyone was standing on chairs, and he was sitting on one. And, yeah, it was one of the best. Even though I didn't recognize many of the songs, we all had a good time. Mm-hmm.
Like, it really surprised me how strong his voice was. Because, like, Bob Dylan's voice is often maligned. You know, like, he's got a very specific thing. And he really does have it, like, even at his age, which I guess is somewhere between the mid and late 70s. He's got a very strong voice. Like, it might have been a little innocent of key on occasion, as Bob Dylan often is, but like, it didn't sound weak or raspy. I was just like, wow, all the fun that people make of Bob Dylan. I think he's got a really strong voice. And it was a good reminder. It was a really good reminder. I don't know if you caught that thing that Dave Grohl said when he addressed, who was it? I think he was the keynote speaker at South by Southwest a couple of years ago. And he was like, imagine if Bob Dylan had auditioned for The Voice or American Idol. No, you're pitchy, you're a little nasal. No, he wouldn't have made it past the first round, and we would have been denied the lifetime of great art from one person that so many of us love so much. And Yeah, no, seeing Bob Dylan was a good and interesting lesson. If you've got a voice, if you've got something to say it. Oftentimes it will find an audience.
Leave the stimulation to the professionals.
Everyone is so smart.
KBRC, more stimulating talk radio.
There's something happening here, and you should know what it is. The dumbing up of America. Now, more AD on the radio.
All right, Funkhauser, let's do a little bit more news, and then we'll discuss exactly what's going on with Kate Winslet and Courtney Love and Harvey Weinstein.
Okay. The nominations for this year's American Music Awards were announced yesterday.
Or as it's also known, the award show that only exists to make the Grammys seem like they don't suck quite as bad. Go on.
Dallas Cowboys owner Jerry Jones turns 75 today.
Meanwhile, his views on freedom of speech turned 500. His party, BYOB, Bring Your Own Botox. That guy absolutely can't win. It's an interesting one because he was the guy who said, like, my players will stand for the anthem. But then he was also the guy who, before the anthem, went out, took a knee with all of his players, and linked arms. And it's I actually kind of feel bad for that guy. Look. Jerry Jones occupies almost none of the moral high ground, like zip, zing, nada. But he did kind of come up with a bit of a solution where before the anthem, in a show of unity, he knelt with all of his players at that one game. And then everybody had to stand for the anthem. He was like, if you play for the Cowboys, you're going to stand for the anthem. But we also have free speech and unity in this country, so we'll do that. And he couldn't win. He could not win. People that were fans of free speech said you can't force your players to stand during the anthem, and people that were fans of the anthem said it's still disrespectful even though you didn't do it during the anthem. It's just, God, there's no pleasing anyone in this day and age. And I actually kind of felt bad for Jerry Jones because he kind of tried to come up with a solution that would make everybody happy. And yeah, maybe if it wasn't Jerry Jones. Like I said, this is a guy who, historically speaking, if you know anything about the Cowboys, and if you know anything about Jerry Jones, historically speaking, you know this guy is not exactly who you look to when you're looking for a moral compass and your moral true north. So perhaps it was the source that made people displeased with his idea of what a solution would be. All right, what else, Funkhauser?
All right, mark this date on your calendar, October 21st, because every Arby's in America is going to serve venison sandwiches for one day only.
So Arby's has, I guess, for the last year or so, been experimenting with the venison sandwich, but only in parts of the country where venison is a little bit more of a common thing to eat. Have you ever eaten venison, Funkhauser?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, man. Neither have I.
I know, right?
So, like, whenever I talk to friends of mine that are hunters, and it's interesting, we have this conversation a lot. Like, there's so many people that are against hunting that are a bit tree huggy, but not tree huggy enough to stop eating meat. Like, you know, people are like, oh, I'm going to buy my chicken my chicken free range, and I'm going to buy this cruelty free meat and all, but, you know, still go, ugh, I don't know how hunters could do what they do. My friends that are hunters are probably the most conscientious people I've ever met when it comes to consuming animal flesh.
Yeah, they use it all.
Because they use it all. Like our friend Randall, who's been on the show a million times. Randall, I don't know if you knew this, but before Randall was it was, I think, 3 years ago. It was before he was in Deadpool, but after he'd been in Walker, Texas Ranger and Grandma's Boy. He had a show called Killin' and Grillin'. And what Randall did was, it was a cross between a hunting show and a cooking show. If you ever get a chance to have Randall cook for you, Funkhauser, you say yes. He makes some of the best food I've ever had in my life. This is how we met. I was like backstage at some rock show, and he was hanging out with some band who had him come by and cook it up for him. and I hadn't eaten all day, and I catch this waft on the breeze of like something that smells freaking delicious. And I was like, "Hey, what you got over there? That seemed pretty good." And they're like, "Oh man, eat up." And they handed me a plate of what was straight up the best food I've ever had ever. And it's stuff that they'd hunted and they'd killed and they'd cleaned themselves. And that's one very interesting thing about hunters. I find that 9 times out of 10, they're so much more conscientious about where their meat came from than someone who pretends to occupy the moral high ground in this situation, but still gets it in a plastic package at the grocery store, which I do. I'm not in any way, shape, or form casting aspersions on shopping for meat at the grocery store, but I just find that these are guys that are so much more conscientious and respectful of where their food came from. And they never, ever would hunt what they weren't going to eat all of. And I think when I talk to folks like that about venison meat, never having had one, they're like, seriously? Really? Because a lot of these people that go out and hunt deer, they bring them home and they have them butchered, and then like large chunks of venison go into the freezer and they eat them throughout the course of the year. So when I've been in the Midwest or when I've been in places in Texas where people hunt a lot and say I've never had venison meat, they look at me like I'm from another planet. But I'm actually kind of interested to try venison sandwiches. One day only, you say, right?
October 21st, one day only.
October 21st, every Arby's in America will serve venison sandwiches. What do you think it's going to cost? Probably not more than a couple of bucks. And you know what, Funkhauser? That really isn't very much dough.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yeah, that just happened.
One more?
You're welcome. No.
That's it. Okay.
I think if you want any more information on that one, you can read it in today's issue of News That Will Piss Off Your Vegan Friends Daily. Go on.
Applebee's is serving dollar margaritas during the month of October.
Yeah. If this affects your plans. It might be a bit of a stunning indictment on the state of your life.
I'll tell you, the airports are going to be like a little bit more lit, I think, during October.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, I guess like the vast majority. Yeah. I'm trying to think of the last time I actually saw an Applebee's in the wild, where I've been walking around looking for a place to eat. There used to be one there used to be an outlet mall in upstate New York that I used to hit up every once in a while. I was with this girl and she liked to go outlet shopping and I had no interest in it. But like my reward for myself would be I would eat an Applebee's sampler plate afterwards. And the sampler plate, I think I could eat one of those. I don't know. All those like restaurants though, do you find as you get older, Funkhauser, you taste the amount of salt that they use and it's off the charts?
Yeah, I get their tricks now that I know how to cook. I see how they made it, quote unquote, tasty. You know
what really kind of alerted me to the amount of sodium and extra salt is in food at most restaurants was my father. When my father lived with me and was dealing with congestive heart failure, what you got to do in those situations is you purge the house of salt. Because if you've got congestive heart failure, anything that makes you hold on to any kind of moisture is a very bad thing. Salt will make you do that. So for about a year while my dad was living with me, there was no salt on anything. Everything was low sodium and there was no additional salt put on any food. And I remember when my father moved away, I was like, okay, I'm getting some fast food. I don't even remember what restaurant it was, but I went and got a fast food burger and I had to spit it out. Like I couldn't eat, like it tasted like I got a mouthful of ocean water. Having been without the additional sodium for a year, it just like I said, it tasted like I'd gone underwater in the ocean and gotten a mouthful of brine, and it was disgusting and I couldn't hack it. And ever since then, I've noticed just how much places, maybe like Applebee's, maybe not. To be fair, I haven't eaten there since this happened, but they rely on so much salt, and it's crazy the amount of that stuff that we consume and don't even think about. What else?
San Francisco tops the list of the best U.S. cities for trick-or-treating.
That would change if residents pass out 49ers tickets. What else?
The world's first sex doll brothel.
I heard about this. Yeah.
Brothel says it's being bombarded with perverted requests.
Oh, wait. A brothel where you can pay to get busy with sex dolls is being bombarded with perverted requests?
Mm.
You know, the word duh was invented for just such an occasion. How much time do we have left?
A good 3. A hard 3.
Oh, okay. All right.
Sweden may become the first nation to go cash-free.
Oh, man. All you doomsday preppers out there, prep a little bit harder, because I think in certain sections of the Bible, based on some interpretations, one of the things that signals the coming of the apocalypse and the end of days is a cashless society. You ever heard this, Funkhauser?
Sounds like folklore.
No. It's like... people think that the end of days will be one of the precursors to it is a cashless society. And it's interesting. The more like every financial transaction has to do with like a click on my phone where you pay someone by PayPal or you transfer money through an app or something like that, the more money becomes this vague idea as opposed to this piece of metal or paper that I hold in my hand, the more of a vague concept money becomes. The convenience level is through the roof, but it also makes me think money's not real. Money's not a thing. Money's an idea, which begs the question, does it really matter if I don't get up and go to work today? Probably not.